Wow, they're just dropping like flies. So I didn't see this one coming. We got the announcement late last week that Luke Cage is not getting a third season. And I know I have to address this because when I did my video about the fact that Iron Fist had been canceled, I mentioned, while I acknowledged that there hadn't been an announcement for a new season of Luke Cage, I also said I expect one to be coming shortly because if they were going to cancel it, they'd have done it by now. A few days later, boom, here we go. So, boy, what do we make of this? Well, the first thing is this reemphasizes how difficult it can be to know what Netflix will and won't renew at any given point because Netflix doesn't release viewer data. So this is distinctly possible that if we knew what the viewer numbers were for Luke Cage Season 2, then maybe we would all have seen this coming as opposed to being a bit blindsided by it. Unfortunately, we flat out don't have that data. Netflix does not make it public. So all we can do is guess. And if I were to guess, which I am to guess, what do I mean if I were? That's what this whole video is. I would say that I would be shocked if Season 2 of Luke Cage had like crap numbers. What I would expect is that they were probably down from the year before. I wouldn't even think precipitously. I don't think it was a massive decline, but the first season of Luke Cage was a bit of an event. It was a big deal. And, well, we got Black Panther now. So I think in a lot of ways, not to say that people didn't still care about Luke Cage. I think in many ways, some of the fervor around that first season was, we're getting this African-American hero. Now, obviously, T'Challa in Black Panther isn't African-American. He's just flat out African. But that became a much bigger thing, especially in appealing to, similar desires, trying to fill a similar vacuum in terms of, a heroic black figure. So I think in some ways what might have hurt second season of Luke Cage was that it wasn't the only game in town anymore. Now, you could argue that, it's playing different games, movie versus TV, but I would bet you that if not leading to a decline, I would not be shocked if that was probably a contributor to the numbers not going up for second season. Because I would not be surprised at all if people who maybe didn't catch the first season I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get around to that. But then saw Black Panther, we're like, no, I feel like I got my fix. I'm good. And like, this is all supposition. I don't know. So let's get off stuff that I'm just blindly guessing about. So I'll just wrap up that bit by saying I don't think it nosedived, and we can't know. But I will bet you that the numbers, they definitely didn't climb, and they probably declined a little bit. And Netflix, just looking at the long game, probably thought to itself, well, this is going to be it's just going to keep going down year over year. Let's just pull the plug now. So what happens next? Well, I know there are more than a few people, at the very least in my own comment sections, who are like, oh, we'll probably get Heroes for Hire now. I really, really, really doubt that. As much as this kind of changes my outlook for the rest of the Marvel shows on Netflix, it does not change my opinion that I do not think they are going to introduce anything new into the slate. I don't think that Netflix is going to do any new Marvel properties. I'm actually not even entirely sure they can, even with the stuff that they've already got, because while they may have the rights to the characters, I'm not sure they're free to just create whatever show they want with those characters. I could be wrong about that. Again, I don't know what exactly the agreement with Marvel looks like, but I'd be surprised if they kind of had that level of freedom. But even if they did, the Defenders was not an exceptionally big hit. Iron Fist was not an exceptionally big hit. Luke Cage, appeared to have a very strong first season, but again, the logic would be that it didn't have as hot a second season. Why would they put these two characters together? And yes, I say that knowing full well that the reason Heroes for Hire was a thing in the comics was because both characters weren't doing exceptionally well, and Marvel went, well, heck, slap them together, see if that helps. I don't expect Netflix to actually do that, though, because they aren't under, the same kind of need to we have to do something with them. I mean, theoretically, they, lose the rights to them, but I don't think Netflix has an expectation that they're going to get to renew these contracts endlessly. I think Netflix is now... I don't think Netflix is going to do what Sony does with Spider-Man, which is no matter what, new Spider-Man movie always in the works, because if they go too long without releasing one, they lose the rights. I don't think Netflix is going to play that game. I think Netflix is looking at it the same way they look at anything on their platform, which is, how are the numbers? What does it cost? Is this beneficial to us? Yeah, which is like the opposite of, like I said, Sony with Spider-Man, who's going, we know this property is valuable. Even if we're losing money at it, we know it could be valuable. We can't lose it. Keep it no matter what. I really don't expect Netflix to have that approach and that vibe. And I also don't expect... Luke Cage, now actually honestly any of the Luke Cage or Iron Fist characters to show up in any of the other shows, because the characters in Iron Fist who were now without a home, they would have fit most naturally into Luke Cage, and Luke Cage is gone. What are the three shows that are left? It's Punisher, it's Daredevil, and it's Jessica Jones. Maybe you could work Luke into Jessica Jones' story, but the thing is, I think that's gonna depend on what they're already planning to do for her third season, because I can't imagine they're gonna completely rework Jessica Jones' first season in order to fit Luke Cage in. So maybe if her third season is good enough that they want to do a fourth season, maybe Luke Cage shows back up for that. That's iffy, though. And whether or not any of these characters could show up on a fourth season of Daredevil, that's hard to say too. I mean, feasibly, honestly, there could be some working in with either with Foggy and the law firm, or with Karen as a reporter could somehow stumble into these guys. That's me saying that, not having finished Daredevil season 3 yet. I'm only a little bit into that. So if the situation for either Karen or Foggy has changed such where that's not going to be possible, I accept that that's possibility. Please don't tell me that. Don't put that in the comments. Don't. All right? The season just came out. Let people get through it. So assuming that it's even still viable, maybe. But again, because they're not kind of already part of the Daredevil story, I don't know if there's a way to slot those characters in there without having them just hijack the narrative. And again, I don't really see Netflix doing that. I don't think they're that desperate to hold on to the rights to these characters. And I'm not even going to mention the Punisher, because I don't think any of these characters really have any business showing up in the Punisher's show. That really is its own thing, which honestly it should be. And I've said before, I didn't particularly care for it, but Frank off to the side being his own thing is how the Punisher works. It's how the Punisher has always worked best. The more integrated the Punisher is with main continuity Marvel, and I'm talking about the comics at this point, usually the worse he is. Pretty much all of his best stories were in isolation, just him. Maybe a reference or here or there. And Daredevil was a good way to introduce him as a character, but now that he's off doing his own thing, he needs to stay doing his own thing. So I would say this seems to me, if anything, feels like an indicator that the bar is high for Netflix's expectations of these properties. And if they fail to meet, they're just going to cut their losses. So I would say actually what I had said before, which was season 3 should maybe be the last season of Daredevil. And again, I said that without having finished it. That was just based off the story that was being set up. And if that gets fully resolved, I at least would feel like they kind of blew their load and there isn't much left to do. That's a ruder turn of phrase than I usually use on here. I probably still won't cut it out. I should, but I won't. So, you know, there's things like that. And then Jessica Jones, I mean, we need to see if it can even find its feet again with a third season, because it lacked the focus that was probably the strongest element of the first season. It was really focused. It knew exactly what it was doing. Second season, it really didn't feel like it knew nearly as clearly what it was even supposed to be doing in the first place. And then Punisher, I mean, again, it's hard to say, but that's kind of got to be off and be its own thing. So I think we may honestly not get to see these characters again. Typhoid Mary Walker from second season of Iron Fist, she could slot into Daredevil especially easily enough. That is originally a Daredevil character anyways. So, like, maybe, and, you know, Claire could still turn up anywhere, but she's been in all the shows anyways. So, again, you know, she's not really tied down, but I think we're done with Danny, which I'm fine with. I think we're probably done with Colleen, who I'll miss. Probably done with Misty, who I'll really miss. I think, honestly, we might be done with Luke, who I'm also really going to miss. Because even though I wasn't the biggest fan of Luke Cage either season, though for different reasons each time, Mike Coulter was really good in that part. He owned that. He had great presence. He had great rapport and chemistry, even with Danny Rand. Who was like one of the few characters who he really needed to have good chemistry with, and he did. He's one of those guys who you put him in a scene with somebody and he makes the scene better. He makes everything with this other character he's interacting with feel better, feel stronger. And yeah, I hope they find a way to continue to use them. I hope they do it organically, because if it gets shoehorned in, then it's just not worth it. And I'm also not going to hold out hope that means we now get them in the movies. Just because the Marvel movies are very much their own entity at this point. They've got their own thing going on. Now, is it like a rights thing? No, not really, but it's kind of a fiefdom thing, which is that, if you didn't already know, the television and the comics are headed under one guy by the name of Feige Perlmutter, and the movies are headed under Kevin Feige, and those two guys don't get along. Now, again, that's not to say that you couldn't move from one to the other, but the thing is, because it's been very clear that aside from like the first one, kind of 2 seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., that there was going to be effectively no crossover from the movies to the TV shows, and there's been zero from the TV back over to the movies, that, you know, it's been really clear that that's going to be the case. And what that means is, even though Luke Cage and Iron Fist and Misty and Colleen are now untethered from the TV, the movies have been getting planned for how many films out there already planning without their presence. It's not going to be worth it to Kevin Feige to completely rejigger his existing plans to integrate these characters into them. It's just not going to be worth the bother. So I don't see that happening either. If it did happen, it'd be cool, but I'm not holding out hope for that. I think we would get a Heroes for Hire TV show before we would see that happen. And I don't think that's happening either. So there you go. Luke Cage. Now both the Immortal Iron Fist and the Man Who Cannot Break have been laid low. What are your thoughts about this? Does this change your feelings about where Netflix is headed, what may or may not happen, your hopes, your dreams, whatever they are? Drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do, because there's buttons and there's links down there. Check them out. There's one to my Patreon, if you feel like supporting the show and what it does. I'm getting close to hitting my next goal. I'd be able to upgrade the camera. How cool would that be? In any case, check it out if you feel like it. But if you don't, no pressure, because at the end of the day, you guys are the council and I just run the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.